Hello, my dear students. Today we're going to talk about the Merchant of Venice, an introduction to the Merchant of Venice, and we will talk about William Shakespeare. Let's start talking about the author, William Shakespeare. He was born in 1564 in Stratford-upon-Avon, England, widely regarded as the greatest writer in the English language. He wrote 39 plays, 154 sonnets, and 2 long narrative poems. Known for his mastery of dramatic structure, character development, and poetic language. The Merchant of Venice was written around 1596 till 1598, blending comedy with serious themes of justice, mercy, and prejudice. Before we start the introduction, let me tell you a very short plot to guess what are the ideas or what are the words that you will find in this story. The Merchant of Venice is about Antonio. He is the merchant of Venice who has made money through trade, and Shylock, a Jewish money lender who lends money to Bassanio so that he can get married. Which of the following words do you think you will find in the story? Check any words which you do not know in your Macmillan dictionary. Let me help you here. Yes, the first word you will find it in the story. O, love, Christian, sea, ship, flesh, cargo, borrow, bankrupt, debt, and court. Now, let's know about the love relationships that you will find it and you will read about it in that story. By the end of the story, each of the women in these pictures in love with one of the men shown below. Let me remind you, if you read about the plot of The Merchant of Venice, yes, Portia, the Lady of Belmont, would marry Bassanio, a lord of Venice. Nerissa, who looks after Portia, would marry Gratiano, a friend of Bassanio. Jessica, the daughter of Shylock, would marry Lorenzo. Before we start talking about the plot of our story, let's know about the history of Venice. Venice was a wealthy maritime republic and a major center of trade between Europe and the East, known for its cosmopolitan population, including Christian and Jewish communities. Venice was home to people from different backgrounds, including Christians and Jews, and the Jewish people, or we can say Jews. Jewish people had to live in a separate area called the ghetto. It's a hood or zone where, where they weren't allowed the same rights as others or as the Christians. The city's complex financial systems and merchant culture are reflected in the play's themes of debt, contracts, and commerce. Shakespeare likely drew on contemporary views of Venice as both exotic and moral ambiguous. Now, let's talk about religious conflict between the Jewish people and the Christians. Venice was a mix of different cultures and religions, including Christians and Jews. In 1516, the government forced Jewish people to live in a separate area called the Venetian Ghetto, which was locked at night. Jews had to wear special clothing and were only allowed to work in certain jobs like money lending and pawn shops. So they weren't free to do anything they would like to do. They had to wear special clothes. Christians often viewed Jews with suspicion, and there were strict rules limiting their rights and freedoms. These tensions were part of everyday life and are reflected in the play's conflict between Shylock, the Jewish moneylender we talked about, and the Christian characters that we're going to mention. Let's talk about the plot. The plot of any story starts with the exposition, then the rising action, then the climax, then exactly falling action, then at the end the resolution. Let's talk about the exposition. Introduces characters for at the beginning we're going to introduce some characters and the settings too. Antonio, Bassanio, Shylock, and the settings are Venice and Belmont. Rising action, you are going to read about the conflict builds Bassanio's quest, Shylock's bond. Climax, courtroom scene where Portia helped Antonio to get out of prison. Falling action, resolution of the bond. The bond itself will be resolved at the end, and romantic pairings. Resolution, harmony restored through moral questions like Bassanio borrows money from Antonio to woo Puccia to marry her. Antonio secures a loan from China. Why? Because Antonio at that time spent all the money that he had in cargoes going to different directions, um, and he divided them into different ships. Who demands a, who demands a pound of flesh as collateral when they didn't return the money back on time? Portia's suitors must choose among three caskets to win her hand, and that was because of her father's will. He mentioned that in his will before he died. Antonio's ships are lost, and Shylock demands his bond. For sure, as that was mentioned in the bond, that if Antonio didn't return the money back on time, the, the condition that he mentioned in the will, he will is going to ask for it. He's going to demand his bond. He's going to take a pound of flesh from Antonio, as he mentioned. Portia, disguised as a lawyer, to save Antonio in the court. The play ends with marriages and reconciliations through Shylock's fate remains troubling. Now let's talk about the settings. In this story, you're going to talk about or find Venice. You're going to read about Venice, a bustling commercial city known for trade, law, and finance. It reflects themes of justice, contracts, and prejudice. Belmont, a romantic, idealized state where love and harmony prevail, it contrasts Venice, harsh realism with poetic justice. So there are only two settings, there are only two places in this play, Venice and Belmont. The characters, Antonio, a melancholic merchant who risks everything for his friend. Melancholic means very sad merchant. So, a melancholic merchant who risks everything for his friend Bassanio, and we have to know that he is the closest friend to Antonio, who seeks to marry Portia, and he asks Antonio to lend him money. Portia, a wealthy heiress, known for her intelligence and wit. Shylock, a Jewish moneylender central to the play's conflict and moral complexity. Shylock is the one or the moneylender that Antonio's going to borrow money from him because as we mentioned that Antonio spent all the money he had in cargoes he bought and divided all the cargoes in different ships going to different directions. But as Basani was in a hurry and he wanted to woo Portia, so he didn't have cash to lend Bassanio the money. So he's going to borrow money from Shylock. Shylock and Antonio, the relationship between Shylock and Antonio wasn't that good, and you will know that later. Graciano, Nerissa, Jessica, Lorenzo, these are the names we mentioned at the beginning of the first video for the introduction to that play. These are supporting characters who add depth to the romantic and social dynamics. Let's talk about the theme in that story. Justice versus mercy. Explored in the courtroom scene and Portia's famous speech. Prejudice and tolerance. And that you're going to find it in Shylock's treatment. Raises questions about religious and culture base. Love and loyalty, romantic love, friendship, and sacrifice drive the character's choices. Appearance versus reality. Casket test, disguises, and hidden motives challenge surface judgments. Thank you, and let's meet in the upcoming video.